we've been your job search besties and helped you in some way, there's a cool way you can support the show. Shout us a virtual coffee.
We get a huge kick out of reading all of your success stories. Head to buymeacoffee.com/interviewboss and shout us a cuppa.
If you keep us caffeinated, we can keep the content coming.
Oh my God, why can I just not do these in advance? Why do I always have to leave things till the last minute? Why did I do that to myself? This is all my fault.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Interview Boss. My name is Emma. I'm a radio journalist who's teamed up with my sister to give you advice, inspiration and support when you're looking for a new job. Sarah is a HR and recruitment professional, and together we're excited to give you all the tips, tricks and behind the scenes knowledge to help you in your career.
Hey Em, and welcome back everyone. We are always telling you guys to shoot your shot. So in every episode, we tell you about a listener who's done exactly that. This ep, we're shouting out Liv, who bought us 3 coffees to support the show.
She said, "Hey Emma and Sarah, after listening to so many fantastic stories from your listeners, I finally get to share my own. In January, I moved to Sydney on my own from Auckland. I just spent 7 years working for the same company and had been shoulder tapped for most of my roles during that time. So my CV and interview prep was certainly in need of some help. Not only was I in a new city, I quit my job and set myself an ambitious goal to get out of supply chain sales and dive headfirst into the tech industry. I applied for about 30 to 40 roles and was interviewed for around 10. Thanks to your support, it only took me 4 weeks to land on the company of my dreams. And the CEO told me yesterday that I gave one of the best functional interviews they'd ever seen. Across the 4-stage interview process, I was well prepared with my best bits. I even followed up afterwards when I thought of a better answer. I'm now 4 weeks in and I'm so grateful to be here. Thanks again for everything you do. Liv."
Oh my God. Congratulations, Liv, a Kiwi making it in the big bad world of Sydney.
Welcome to Sydney.
I love that we hear about the following up after with a better answer, because there's some topics, there's some episodes we always hear about the feedback on. We know they're great. We know you love them. But I love it when we hear about something that we just don't hear as much. You know, it's good to get feedback on those.
Yeah, there really is an episode out there for every single niche conundrum of job seekers. That's what we're here for. But how amazing and great stats of applying for 30 to 40 jobs, getting interviews for 10, landing a job in 4 weeks in a new country, which can be really tough. So amazing work. So proud of you.
And I think it goes to an episode that Liv may have come across where there's a difference between doing well enough in your interview just to get the job and doing well enough in the interview that they are blown away and everyone is excited for you to start. That I think that is something that people underestimate. They're preparing enough just to get the job. I think there's so many benefits that you can get out of knocking their socks off.
Now that CEO loves you, guess who's probably going to approve your pay rise in 6 months? CEO.
That's right. Or who gave you a really competitive offer in the first place, you know, like so much can be set up by you absolutely doing all that prep.
Now, before we get into this episode, if you need more help than we can fit in a podcast, go check out our website for free templates, coaching services, and our interview academy. Today, we are talking about neurodivergence in the job search. This is part 2 of our deep dive series on navigating interviews with neurodivergence. This was very popular, our first episode. We got so many comments saying, "Thank you so much. I've never clicked faster on an episode. I've needed this. There's no advice out there on this." So we are happy to be diving in, this time though with practical tips. Now, we put the call out last episode and you guys sent in your conundrums, your lived experience. We've taken that and we're going to give practical tips based on those different scenarios that our community has found themselves in.
Yep. Now, there will be a part 3. And in part 3, we're going to focus on disclosing. Do you disclose? How do you go about it? Do you disclose to your current workplace or in the interview? What do you say? How do you do all of that? This episode is about the parts of the job search that you guys said you found challenging and our practical advice for them. Now, The quotes and the messages we're about to read out came from a whole bunch of different listeners from all around the place. We aren't going to use any names in this episode just to keep everyone's privacy intact, but also because I think it really helps to showcase different perspectives and doesn't really matter what name someone has or...
Doesn't matter who someone is. This is a universal experience for people. So we've broken it up into sections of topics that people have said they struggle with. So first cab off the rank, job applications. So someone said, job applications take up so much of my executive functioning bandwidth. So it's a relief when I come across a streamlined, simple application form that doesn't have a million questions or asks me to regurgitate my resume. This really sets me back in the volume of applications I can submit. Another person said, I suspect I have ADHD and I'm currently looking into getting an assessment for diagnosis and support options. What I struggle with the most is submitting applications by the closing date. I've pulled many all-nighters just to submit my resume and selection criteria by the 11:59 p.m. deadline.
Oh, doesn't that feel so real? Doesn't that feel like something we can all relate to? And the executive functioning bandwidth, like, you know, all the questions it's asking you, all the things you have to pull together. I think something that I noticed in general, and that you might be noticing as well if you're listening to this episode and you don't consider yourself neurodivergent, a lot of these struggles and a lot of this advice is relevant to everyone, actually. And a lot of the things that make for good accommodations for people with different brains are just things that make it easier and better for everyone in the process. So I think a lot of these will feel a little bit familiar. But my first bit of advice is maybe a little bit unhinged. And I just, you know, I'm not your guru. Don't do exactly what I say. I'm throwing some stuff out here. You can pick what works for you. So if you're applying for the kind of roles that have deadlines where they're not looking at applications until they're actually closed, like that deadline is you don't get any prizes or there's no benefits to you submitting it earlier than that. You know, like government tends to be very much like this, where they're not even opening the folder until that day has closed. Well, in that case, just lean into the deadline. A deadline is one of the things that is so effective for an ADHD brain, for someone who struggles with understanding, kind of planning ahead, consequences, all of that kind of stuff. You have that urgency when you have an actual real deadline. Some of what I think makes this really difficult, and I know our listener mentioned that, you know, they've pulled many all-nighters just to get it in before 11:59. I'm sure that was stressful, and I'm sure that wasn't like, you know, a fun experience, but you submitted it, you did it, you got it done. And I think that there's two different sides to the problem here. If those all-nighters are genuinely really taking a toll and you just like cannot be doing that anymore, sure, that's, you know, something that you want to consider. But the cost of the shame is also really critical. Like, you got the application in, you submitted on time. If you're thinking to yourself, oh my God, why can I just not do these in advance? Why do I always have to leave things till the last minute? Why did I do that to myself? This is all my fault. If you can just change that part and leave the other bit the same, you still stayed up all night, but you're like, wow, look at me, I got it done. The shame is taking a toll as well. If you can't change both things, just change the shame. If there's something that I've learned when it comes to symptoms of ADHD, neurodivergence, stop trying to think that you're going to be a different person tomorrow. You're not. You've left things to the last minute probably your whole life. Expecting yourself suddenly to stop doing that overnight is setting yourself up for failure. And your self-esteem takes a massive hit every single time you let yourself down, every single time you shame yourself for why can't I do that. Stop trying to be a different person. Embrace it. I said this is a little unhinged.
That's great advice. And yeah, it's like if you're wired that way, programmed that way, that you've always been able to have a burst at the last minute and get stuff done, like lean into it. If you look at it from a productivity standpoint, okay, sure, not great for the nervous system and maybe the cortisol that was coursing through your veins right before bed, but say that was like a 2-hour power session, you smashed it out because you were so under the pump and then it's done, versus maybe if you had have been trying to force yourself to do it throughout the week week during the day. It could have taken you a week of, say, going to the library every day, staring at the laptop, like just slowly getting nothing done. And when you think about the cost of that over the week of trying to do it in the quote unquote normal way or normal time, like who is that serving?
And like, I think there's a grief there of being like, I wish I was the kind of person who could do it in advance, but you're not. Like, there's different levels to, like, we're not just saying like, oh, I can't help it. Like, we're not giving up. It's just, I think what we're grieving here is that I wish that I could do that. But I'm saying just accept that that is incredibly difficult for you to do and pick something else to focus on. Pick starting a couple of hours earlier instead of starting 4 days earlier. Do you know what I mean? Like, pick going, okay, well, I'm going to do my templates, but I'm not going to actually start on the application itself or the selection criteria until the night before. I've blocked out that night. I've cancelled all my plans for the day after. Like, whatever that is, like, lean into it. What would that look like? Again, not for everyone, and it's not our only piece of advice, but it's there.
It's important to note, though, if this is not the public service or government and it's just kind of regular private company and they are considering people as soon as they apply and they get the applications, it is important for us to mention that you will be missing out on opportunities doing them last minute. Sometimes companies will list a closing date for a month's time, but if in the first week they've been flooded with excellent applicants, they can close the applications at any time. And with your luck, that would be the day that you were going to sit down and do it, and then you do miss out.
Or they leave it open, but the likelihood that your application gets looked at because they've already started interviewing people, like, it's helpful to be in early in that case. And so in that case, leaning into the deadline is not going to help. So that's when we have to do something different. I think this comes down to what works for you. It's trial and error for what works for different people. Some ideas though, body doubling. Get on a call with someone. Have your partner do their taxes that they've been avoiding while you do your job application you've been avoiding. Like, join one of the online kind of accountability groups where you can join like a chat session. At the beginning, everybody says, I'm going to clean my room. And someone says, I'm going to work on my research paper. And someone says, I'm going to apply for this job. And then you all like focus and work for 25 minutes on camera. Really great. There's a couple of different versions of that. Go look it up. The other thing I think that can help is like really breaking it down. Getting started can be one of the hardest parts.
Starting is so hard.
Yeah.
Do you know that I now lean into starting? Starting for me is the biggest barrier in my whole entire life, like constantly. And I procrastinate because I hate the starting, and I hate how when you're starting, there's no progress because you're starting, and so it's not motivating. Anyway, biggest challenge of my life. I now set aside time to starting. So I'll go to the library, open my laptop, get the application that I need, like lay out the Word doc, like, you know, set myself up, get my head in the game, shut the laptop, and it's a job well done. Because now tomorrow when I come in,
honestly,
I can do it.
Yep. How small can you make the first step? Are you opening up a document, calling it resume version 1, putting your name at the top, and then saving it, and that's it for today? You've started. You've gotten the first little element out of the way.
It's the hardest part.
Maybe you're just going to find your old resume. We actually have the resume update challenge. There's a podcast episode. You can go and find all about that. And there's an associated email sequence that you can go and get that will email you once a day to say, okay, today all we're doing is finding our existing resume template. Whatever you currently have, we're finding that. Okay, tomorrow we're going to do one little step. It breaks it down into tiny little pieces. That stuff really, really helps.
I will also say to my partner, can you please confiscate my phone? And then he comes and gets it and takes it into another room, because inevitably I do 5 minutes and then I'm like, oh, that's enough. And I would go to pick up my phone, but I can't. And so then I go, better keep going.
You've got to work out what works for you. Like, you just have to lean into what's unhinged. Sometimes, for whatever reason, starting the document on my phone in Google Docs like feels easier than like opening my laptop. And so sometimes when procrastinating preparing a podcast episode, I'll just do the first few steps in my notes app on my phone, because for whatever reason that just feels easier than like opening the document, logging into Google Drive.
Big laptop is scary.
Yeah, sometimes it is. You've just got to try and be like, look, what would this look like if it was so easy and I could just do the first bit?
I'm just thinking of more and more unhinged hacks. I'm realizing that I have quite a few that I rely on.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm writing anything lengthy, whether it's like an essay, this got me through uni, or, you know, it could be a selection criteria or something, I'll get an enormous, I'll get a big A4 bit of paper and I'll write if I need 1,000 words, I'll write 1,000, 900, 800, all in a big, all the way down, but like giant numbers all the way down.
Yeah.
And then every 100 words I get to highlight, okay, now 900 left. But I end up frantically checking the word count like every sentence. Like it's addictive.
Yeah, but you know what? Like, just who cares? Like, just lean into the little gremlin part of your brain. It's fine. Okay, so job applications with lots of questions and lots of little bits can be really tough. So I think when you are in the zone, when you are up till midnight doing that thing, try and think of future you who's doing this again at some point. This bit is impossible to do when you're not in the zone. So I'm saying when you are in the zone, when you're finally sat down and you're actually doing it, just try and think of one or two things that you can do for future you who might be in this situation again. Save a template document with all of your resume stuff in it. Save a template document with the answers to the questions that you used for that job application. Because sometimes you can press submit and it's gone off and you don't actually see those answers, so that you can try and reuse them next time. You don't have to start from a blank page every time. Now, AI can really help here because it can help you reword the stuff that you've already done before. And that way, each successive job application will be slightly easier than the last one because you've got this bank of questions that you've used before for selection criteria. You can collect these over years of your career. Like, people really do this. It really helps. However, the disclaimer with AI is you have to have written the original versions. There can't be AI versions that you're AI repurposing into more AI slop. It's not helpful. AI is only as good as the information you give it. If you give it your resume, it does not know why you're applying for this job or why you're interested in it. It's going to make up some generic BS. So write the original versions, repurpose them cleverly.
I can confirm I have an epic bank of selection criteria questions. And once I went to apply for a job and the exact niche specific outrageous question, I was like, I have this on file, and I stuck it in there, tweaked the company name, and it took me 5 minutes. Whereas the first one I ever did, that would have taken hours.
Exactly. So handy. Think about future you. Now, we've already talked a little bit about breaking things up, but separate out the work if you can. If you're looking at applying for jobs thinking, oh my God, how do I do all of this? Separate out the resume work from the applying for jobs work. Work on your resume, get it to the point that you're happy with it. Save the two versions, like one for the admin-focused roles, one for the sales-focused roles, or whatever, how many versions make sense for you. And then aim to reuse those as much as possible. We're not trying to go back into resume editing mode just to submit the application. We've done that part. Our job is now to attach it to different applications. I think splitting those things up can make it really helpful.
Yeah. And also pick your battles. So sometimes you have to decide when you're applying how much effort this job application calls for. And is it worth it? And you know, like, I really, really want this. This is worth going through it. Or is it a maybe? And if you think I just don't have the capacity right now, it's going to have to get skipped. That's okay.
Or like we've talked about, you know, not tailoring your resume for every job application. I don't think you should be tailoring your resume for really any job applications. If you've identified, okay, this is a type of job I haven't really applied for before, maybe it is worth tailoring it, but only because I'm going to save that version and I'm going to reuse it again when I see another job that kind of matches that criteria. Fine. You shouldn't be writing a cover letter for every single job you apply for unless you're really not applying for that many. Some jobs that you apply for, if they're in the maybe category, just don't do a cover letter. Just attach your resume that you've already done and only do the mandatory fields when it comes to the questions. And then the other ones that you do really care about, you think you're more in it with a chance for, take the time to spend your energy on those ones. This is just general advice that I give to anyone, honestly. I really think you should pick your battles.
And when it comes to asking for an accommodation, what are your thoughts on asking for that during the applying phase?
Well, I had to think about this, and I don't know if you can or should really ask for accommodations in terms of like, I need more time to apply, or like, can I have a different application form? I can't see what that would look like. I think these are kind of fairly practical things that, well, they just need your information by a certain time. Maybe if you came across it and it was closing in a day, like maybe you could ask in that case, but I think that just kind of is a general thing and not really an accommodation thing. But if you have different ideas or you've done this before, let us know. I would be interested to see how you did that and what you actually asked for when it came to the application.
Moving on to the struggles of being asked interview questions. Here are some comments from our community. Someone said, I also struggle with not only the interview process, but all the prep that goes into it beforehand. I will procrastinate till the day I die. Someone else said, I don't have a diagnosis, but as an introvert, the part of the interview process I struggle with most is formulating my answers to behavioural questions when under pressure. Using my best bits was already super helpful for this, but I've also considered asking for the interview questions or themes to be shared ahead of time. I've recently been applying for jobs and I just got an invitation to interview with the questions attached to the email without even having to ask. It was an absolute game changer. Another person said, having interview questions provided beforehand. I think this would help me avoid the feeling of forgetting my responses and going blank. Someone else chimed in and said, I was once given the interview questions in advance, which felt like a gift from the heavens. I'm someone who needs meeting agendas ahead of time so I know what to expect, or I'll often follow up after a meeting to share my input on the topics discussed. As much as I try to prepare, it's always hard to collect my thoughts on the spot.
This came up a lot, people saying interview questions in advance. And again, back to, I actually think almost everyone would say that this is a huge benefit and this is something that most interview processes could benefit from. And just other people who are generally like horribly nervous when it comes to interviews and don't have neurodivergence in any formal kind of a way would also really benefit here. Like it's one of those things that's just kind of good for everyone. I love that this is more and more of a trend. I think it's wonderful. What I do wonder about it though, and like if I was interviewing myself and thinking about trying to do this, my favourite way to interview people is not necessarily to have every single question planned out in advance. And so I do wonder whether there's a bit of a blend of both that might be the best of both worlds, where you're saying, okay, here's some of the key questions that I know we're going to ask you. Here you go. But there will be other just general kind of follow-up questions and in-between conversation. But here's some things that you can prepare for. I think that would still help. Like people are saying, you know, even just the themes would be handy. I think this is awesome. However, you're not always going to be just handed a gift from the heavens and given the questions in advance. So what is our advice?
So often when we're avoiding things, when it comes to procrastination, it's tasks that have an emotion attached to it. So it's helpful to try and unpack what that emotion is for you. Tell me more about this.
I think this can be a bit of a game changer when you're procrastinating something. I think it's easy to just be like, well, I'm procrastinating it because I don't want to do it or because it's hard. And I think if you dig a little bit deeper, often you'll find that the tasks that you put off the most have an emotion attached. So it could be there's a bit of shame that you have about your career and the fact that you don't have more experience, or the fact that you left that job and you never got promoted there, or whatever it might be. You know, we talk about the elephant in the room. There might be something like that that you just don't want to talk about. And that's making you feel like, how am I going to prepare for this interview? Because I'm just trying to avoid this topic. And now I'm going to have to talk about it in front of someone.
Yeah, wow. Thinking now, everything I procrastinate about is because I have some kind of anxiety or insecurity attached to that, or nervousness surrounding that certain thing.
Yeah. And just identifying that a little bit just somehow gives it a little bit less power. You're able to kind of separate, hey, I'm feeling this emotion. That's why I don't want to do the prep. Well, if anything, doing the prep might make me feel a bit more comfortable about my career because it'll actually help me work out how I'm going to explain this. Like, you can't logic your way out of emotions, obviously, but I think just being aware of them is helpful.
No, it's so annoying because when I'm procrastinating and like, it's a shame thing. It's like I'm worried about this, nervous about this, that I'm not going to do a good job, so I'm just putting it off. But then the anxiety manifests that I haven't done anything.
Yes.
And the antidote to that anxiety is to fucking do something. But I can't because, and it's like, and then the second you do something.
Also, I love that you said the anecdote instead of the antidote.
Whoops, the antidote.
The antidote to that anxiety. So I think what can help in those situations is grace to yourself. Like, it's okay that I haven't done it up until now. I can't do anything about that.
And then the second you've done something, all of it goes away because you're like, we did something, we feel good. But why is it not more simpler for your brain to just see that you'll feel better if you do it?
I know. You could be trying to avoid the disappointment of missing out on the job. I think this one's kind of deep, right? Because if you don't get it and you didn't prep, well, then you can be like, well, I didn't even really prep for that interview. I probably would have got it if I prepared. You're kind of giving yourself like an excuse as to why you didn't get the job to protect yourself from the disappointment of being like, well, if I actually did prepare, then I might have to face the fact that I just actually didn't get the job. And it's not because of my preparation. There wasn't anything I could do about it, which is scary. We know that uncertainty, we hear that all the time from our listeners, is you can't control the outcome. It doesn't feel good.
Yeah, definitely. It could also feel hard to prepare, and the feeling of doing something that you don't feel good at is vulnerable and scary.
Yeah. I am hoping that somebody feels a little bit seen in one of those emotions, but it could be really different for you of what's actually behind it. It could be shame because you've put it off so far, like because you always wait until the last minute because you should have started earlier. Like, there's a lot kind of going on there. And I think if you can identify the emotion, that might give you some clues as to what to do about it. I think acceptance is a huge part of it. It doesn't mean approving, like, it's okay that I didn't start until now or whatever. It's okay that I did that bad thing and lost my job or whatever. You don't have to approve of that behavior, but it is what it is. What's happened has happened. You can only make the choice about the future.
An important bit of advice too, in response to our listener that touched on this, it's actually impossible to collect your thoughts on the spot. Important to note, no one's doing that. I guess that's where our Best Bits framework comes in, because anyone, neurodivergent or not, if they're going into an interview and live listening and then thinking and then translating and delivering on the spot, everyone would go blank.
Yeah, absolutely. The idea that you would have to go into your memory for the first time, find a subject of an example to talk about, remember it, structure it, like think about the details of it, talk it out at the same time, as well as potentially remembering what the question was to maybe put some links in about, what they asked, as if you would ever give a good interview answer under those circumstances. People who do well at interviews and can kind of look like they're doing well off the cuff, it's because they've done the thinking up front. Like, they had that story ready. Maybe they've told it before, maybe not for a very long time even, but they've maybe had to talk about that project a lot or something. And so it's just a little bit easier and a bit fresher for them. So we're not trying to collect our thoughts on the spot. We're trying to collect our thoughts beforehand in some kind of a structure. So this is where Best Bits really come in. We've got so many episodes on how to do this, but the Interview Academy is a really great way to kind of work through those steps, because it can be, I think, a little bit tricky to work out, what do I do with my best bits? Okay, I keep coming up with all these different options of stories that I've got, and now I've got this big long list. Am I just going to rehearse them all out loud? Am I going to try and unpack them a little bit? Like, what are the steps that I should go through? Because it's very easy to spend too much time brainstorming, and then you go to the interview and all you've got is a list of ideas and you haven't actually fleshed any of them out. Or you're doing practice questions, but that's not helping you think through them and unpack them and structure them, so you're not getting any better at your answers. It's easy to spend time on the wrong things, I guess is what I'm saying. And that's, I think, what Interview Academy is really good at. It's not anything that we've never said before. It's more about, do this first, fill out this many questions, then do this next step for this long and then do this next step. Like it kind of gives you where to stop.
And a great way to practice is to do your best bits, practice them a few times, but then you have to practice assigning them to questions. So get someone in your life to go on our interview database and just ask you random questions and then put the flashcards away, just using the thinking that you're doing of all the best bits you already have. When they say one, rack your brain of, all right, which best bit would I assign to that question? Yep, it would be this one. And then you can practice on the fly, like the intro line, like the general statement that you make, and then slot in the best bit. So that's a way that you can practice the thinking on the spot part, so to speak. But really, you're not thinking on the spot. You're allocating on the spot.
You're matching on the spot. That's exactly right. We're splitting it up into different skills. So the only bit that you're doing on the spot is picking which of my stories I'm going to tell. Now, what does an accommodation look like for interview questions? Well, you could ask for the questions to be provided up front, or if they could at least let you know what topics to prepare for. Now, I think with accommodations and asking, you can do this with a disclosure. You can say, this is my diagnosis, this is what I struggle with, here's how it would really help me if you could accommodate this. Or you can just ask for this result without formally kind of disclosing. So completely up to you. I'm going to give you an option of what I think this would sound like just in general, and you can tailor this to include more details if you like. Hey, Interview Boss listeners, if the podcast just isn't doing it for you and you need way more help to prep for your next interview, we have the perfect thing for you. Interview Academy. Em, tell us all about it.
This is huge. This is the love child of Sarah after doing hundreds of one-on-one coaching sessions, finding out what people struggle with the most, common mistakes. Sarah has created the ultimate course that you can do in your own time, self-paced, heaps of modules, videos, interactive quizzes, a workbook that will become your Bible by the end that you can take with you into your interview, because if you're a long-time listener, you know that we endorse taking notes into your interview. It's a game changer.
Check out more about it at interviewboss.com.au/interview academy. So here's what it would sound like. Thank you for the invite. I'm really looking forward to meeting with the manager on, the 14th. I'll be preparing for the interview based on the job description that you shared, but I found in the past when I have an idea of the specific topics or the themes that the interview is going to cover, I'm able to answer questions in more depth and we get a better conversation and a better sense of my skills. Some companies have been able to share the interview questions in advance, which of course would be incredible, but even an idea of the interview themes or topics would be helpful. Understand if this isn't something you're able to provide, but I wanted to ask.
Lovely. I'd give them to you.
Right. And look, it's not like they have them and they don't want to give them. They may not even have them. Like they may not prepare interview questions in advance. The interviewers may be all going off the cuff, which might make it even more challenging. But you can ask for this and you can also throw in a disclosure. Hey, I find verbal processing more challenging. It's really helpful if I can read questions at the same time as hearing them. Do you think that they could be provided in advance or even to read in the interview? Like you can tailor that to your comfort level.
Yeah, and I like to think that a lot of companies are getting on board. I noticed the little disclaimer at the bottom of job ads a lot more saying, we're an equal opportunity employer. If you have accommodation requests, email here. So I like to think that less companies are going to be spooked and caught off guard by this, but unfortunately, it's not as common as we'd like.
And we will get into disclosures in our part 3. But I think what can be a really nice in between is when you're asking for the thing that would help you without necessarily having to fully give the stamp of this is my label, this is my diagnosis. Like you can kind of do this nice middle world where you're sharing, hey, here's something about me. I find it hard sometimes in interviews. I don't do my best because of X, Y, Z. And you're not really saying that that's because of a formal diagnosis. It might be, it might not be. But you're asking, hey, here's an accommodation. I think that can be a nice middle ground. So it's something to consider.
We'll move on now to explaining symptoms and the concerns that we got from our community. So someone said, I have a neurological disease that affects my coordination, including my speech skills. I've been telling people that I have this condition to avoid people confusing me with a drunk person. I can't find a new job.
Oh, tough. I think when the symptoms that you're trying to talk about or discuss get really specific, it's sometimes easier to formally disclose, because I think it's actually kind of hard to say, I sometimes slur my word. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of almost harder to explain that without actually kind of labeling it. So I actually think that's almost the easier way to go for something like this. So here's what that could sound like. Thank you for the opportunity for the interview. I was kind of imagining that you might send this before like a phone chat with a recruiter or something like that, something a little bit, the first stage that you're going to chat to someone. Thank you for the opportunity to interview. I wanted to let you know ahead of the call that I have a neurological disease that affects how my muscles work and that affects my speech. It can make me sound a little bit slurred, particularly when I'm a bit stressed. It doesn't affect my ability to do my role in any other way, but I wanted to let you know in advance why I might sound a little bit different.
That's a great message. And getting on the front foot, you're not allowing them to jump to any conclusions, because unfortunately, a lot of people might judge this person and make all kinds of assumptions. And by getting in early, they're putting any of those concerns to bed.
And it fits in with what we talk about with the elephant in the room just in general. If there's no information, in the absence of clarity, the interviewers are going to come up with their theory or their in-between of what they think is true and why you might have slurred your words, or, why you really left your last job or whatever. Like, if you're able to insert some this is actually what's going on in between, I think that can really help.
Onto the notice that you get given before an interview, we had someone say that simply having more notice before an interview, even having a week's notice rather than the minimum 3 days, really helps me break up preparation instead of it feeling like go, 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 go from application to interview.
This feels so real, right? Like, just having a little bit more time to prepare before I have to go in.
Because sometimes, picture the all-nighter. We've had the all-nighter. The next day's a blur. Then we get back to normal routine. And then they're calling us saying, yep, tomorrow. And you think, fuck, I haven't even recovered from the nervous system reset. I need a week. I want the weekend. I want some time.
So real. I love how you said the next day's a blur after the all-nighter. Isn't that real? So you will often get offered just the soonest available time. That's just the default. It doesn't mean anything necessarily. It doesn't mean that that's your only option. It doesn't mean you have to accept it. It can feel like you have to accept it. We actually have a whole episode about this just in general for our listeners, that you don't have to accept it. And it's okay to say, hey, that doesn't really work for me. Can we do the next day instead? But it is easier as, someone who's scheduling interviews to say, what about Wednesday? And it's totally normal for people to say, Wednesday's not great. Could we do Thursday afternoon? And you're like, yeah, no worries. It's that easy. Oh, sorry, Friday doesn't really work for me, but I could do any day next week. Bang, you've got the weekend. Game changer, right? Here's how you might be able to do this in an email. And again, you could do this all without disclosing if you wanted to add that kind of detail in here, but here's how it could sound. Thank you for the offer. I'm excited to meet with the team. I know you mentioned Wednesday that the hiring manager was hoping to book it in. I'm really excited about the role and I want to make sure that I have the chance to prepare. Is there any chance that they're available on Monday or Tuesday instead? You don't have to kind of talk about why or where it comes from. You can just say, I just want to prepare. But you could also disclose. Thanks for the offer. I'm excited to meet with the team. Your invite email mentions accommodations. And I've kind of said here that maybe they actually do say, in their email, if there are any accommodations we can make, let us know. I think that would be a really good open door for you to say something like this. Your invite email mentions accommodations. I have autism spectrum disorder and I find it helps a lot for interview processes when I'm able to prepare carefully. I know you offered Wednesday for the interview, but is there any chance that that same person is available Monday or Tuesday instead?
Nice. Doesn't feel like much of an ask, does it?
No, it's just such a tiny little thing.
Especially when you consider that even someone who's not neurodivergent, what if they had a tricky job that was hard to get out of? It would be totally fine, for me to be like, oh, I'm actually on air. It's really hard for me to obviously sneak off during the day. So can I do, next week, or I'll have to take leave? People would understand that. And I haven't even disclosed any kind of diagnosis. So yeah, it's very fair enough.
It's not that we're avoiding disclosing or talking about it. I just want to put out to people that you don't have to. The question of whether you want to disclose or not, I think can be a separate one to whether or not you want an accommodation like this. You can ask for them and get them without ever worrying about the disclosure conversation if you want.
The next theme that popped up a lot was the ambiguity of the job search. So someone said, I think a lot of us struggle with ambiguity and nuance. It feels like we're constantly trying to learn a set of unwritten rules. For example, there's an option to upload a cover letter. Do I need to include one? Or what are they trying to figure out about me by asking this interview question? We need clear expectations. This is so true. And also, not to mention that the kind of unwritten rules about small talk and coming off friendly and bubbly, and like there's a whole lot of skills to interviewing that aren't just about conveying who you are. So this is tough.
And your experience. Yeah. I think it's kind of obvious, but start with the instructions. Like if it's mandatory, yes, you have to include it. Like start there. Then from there, I think it can help to understand the why behind interviews. I think often, the ambiguity and nuance of like, what are they trying to figure out about me? I need clear expectations. Do I have to include one? It's helpful to understand, well, when does a cover letter help? When does it not help? When is it making a difference? When is it not? If you have more context around those things, it might feel easier to make those decisions about whether you should or shouldn't, or whether you're going to or not. So we often break down on this podcast where a question is coming from, or why we recommend a certain thing, or what's going on behind the scenes. I think that can really help. So listening to lots of, additional content and perspectives, I think can really help. But also, I kind of thought with this, maybe you could find some content that's aimed at people who are hiring and look at things from the completely other side. Go into, okay, what are they saying for how do I ask good interview questions? How do I work out who the best person to hire is? How do I, hire the best person for my team? What culture questions can I ask or something? Like thinking about and listening to advice for the other side, I think could really help get context on like, why are they asking me that question? What are they discussing that they're kind of looking for? Or why are they using this versus that interview strategy?
Also important to mention that there's a skill in the interview process that kind of boils down to not being too led by the question. What do you mean by this?
Too led by the question is like, I haven't come up with a better way to phrase that, but I'm hoping that people are able to pick up what I'm putting down. It's essentially that people are putting too much importance on the exact word choice and the exact phrasing of the question, because I think a lot of times interviewers haven't prepared that question in a particular way. It's just come out that way as they've said it. And so you're choosing they chose the word conflict instead of difference of opinion, or, different ways of seeing things, or they said it like this. And so my example that I was going to use now doesn't fit because they've said it like that, when they really didn't mean that much by the difference of those two words. So I think we've got to practice that skill of kind of stepping back from the exact wording of the question and trying to work out what the topic or the skill that they're asking the question about. Now, I actually included a couple of lessons on this in Interview Academy because I found in my interview coaching sessions that you could prepare all your best bits and have all your stories and they could be incredible. But if you got a question and you could have used one of your incredible stories for it, but you didn't realize it, and so you made up something on the spot because you thought that you didn't have anything that matched. You could have fitted one of your great stories in, but then you never got to tell your great story. You could still go wrong in the interview, even though you've done all this incredible prep. So it was a skill that I identified that some people struggle with and can help unpacking and practicing a little bit. So that can help. The example Em gave earlier about looking at our interview questions database, looking at those questions, having a look at the topics that are associated with each of those questions and trying to familiarize yourself with, okay, what are the skills, what are the topics that they're looking to understand about me from this question in general, as a general theme, and try and match your answer to the general theme rather than the exact specific wording of the question. Because two interview questions about what's your leadership style could be worded in slightly different ways. They're not really looking for two completely different answers. It's the same answer.
This is easier said than done because I know, generally speaking, for, people on the autism spectrum, their brain is wired to understand explicit direction and not these inferred, kind of mysteries. So it's hard to tell them, try and catch the vibe, because that is exactly what they can sometimes struggle with. But that's a great tip to try and help train the brain for the vibe, is by looking at our database and seeing what questions link to which topics.
Yes, I get where people come from thinking like, oh, why aren't we just asking for exactly what we want? I think often it's because as a candidate, if you've never sat on the other side, you just have absolutely no idea why they're even asking you this question in the first place. So you therefore definitely don't understand what they're looking to hear from you from it. And you've kind of got absolutely no context whatsoever. So understanding the general idea of how your answer is going to help them make their decision can help you then interpret that it's not a quiz question. It's not a, Emma, can you find in your brain as quickly as possible and say it out loud to me the time that you've had the most conflict in your whole career? Go. They're not looking into your brain and comparing as to whether you told me the right thing or not.
Yeah.
It's not a quiz question where there's a right or wrong answer. What they're saying is, hey, Em, in workplaces, people sometimes don't get along. That might happen to you in this role as well. The context before, the unspoken part before I've actually asked you the question is, I want you to give me an example that represents your skills in this space, specifically where you dealt with conflict with someone. And so if your answer is conflict, but it doesn't demonstrate any skills, you're in an interview. So it's not just like, oh, here's a time someone yelled at me on the street, not an interview answer. Does that kind of make sense? Like understanding that context can help you interpret the questions and understand that it's not a trick and they're not being vague. There's just a subtext to the environment that you're in.
Great tips. Next, onto memory. This was also mentioned a few times. Someone said, doing the prep, then somehow forgetting everything in the 10 minutes that you've arrived early. The notebook should help though. And our advice for this is, as that person said, take a notebook in with you, write down your best bits, not the whole paragraphs, but dot points that will jog your memory. You can actually refer to it in there, or sometimes you don't even need to. Just knowing that it's there and you can fall back on it if you go blank is a game changer.
It is. And I think the thinking work helps a lot here. If you have just come up with some scripts and practiced them verbatim without actually thinking about what you're saying, yes, that is the kind of thing that is going to slip out of your head, like you were just reading a script, like you're in a movie, like you're in a play. If you actually think about that project that you did or that compliment you got from that boss and how you helped them, and unpack what it was about, how you even noticed that they needed to fix that problem or whatever, and what made that special or what made that difficult or what made that interesting. I think those things are much harder to just completely slip out of your brain. Sure, you might stumble on your words a little bit, but you lived this. It's in your memory. You've spent so much time thinking about it. In my experience, it's less likely to just completely disappear if you've spent some time thinking and unpacking and brainstorming it, rather than just rehearsing your script.
Yes. We also got some tips from the community, which is so awesome. These are things that people with lived experience have credited as helping them. So firstly, thank you very much. Listen to Interview Boss, especially the Best Bits episodes. If you can, sit on interview panels internally. Seeing the process from the other side really helped my nerves and also gave me the confidence to broaden my answers, similar to ways I would hear from candidates. Even though I'm now a hiring manager, interviews still scare me no matter what side of the table I'm on.
Proof that interviewers are sometimes just as scared as you are.
Yeah, I can attest to this. I recently sat in on an interview panel and my little mind was blown. It was just fascinating and I was understanding so much. Like there was one guy who gave an example that I knew something about because it was a newsy example, but the big bosses next to me would have had no idea about the example and he didn't elaborate much. And I was just kind of sitting in. I wasn't like really asking questions and stuff. So I desperately wanted to prompt him and like I saw how if my counterparts were more intuitive and kind of prompted him and drew it out of him more, he really could have shone, but he let himself down because he didn't give enough context. And so the example didn't land. And I was like, Sarah talks about this all the time. I could see it because I was impressed because I understood the newsy thing.
Yes.
I was like,
you
oh my God.
understood the bits that he didn't say, but not everybody else does. And so I do this all the time in interview coaching sessions. Someone will tell me their story and I go, I know there's more to that. I know that this is impressive. But I have to play devil's advocate and I'm like, so sounds like you just did a basic task, like help me understand why that was important. Oh, well, there were 500 of them. Okay, well, you never mentioned that. How about that's really important context in order for me to be impressed? And like you have a hunch. And maybe you were like, okay, I can imagine what his workplace would have been like if that was there and this was here. Oh, wow, that is impressive. But he didn't say those things. And so it left the door open for the people next to you to just not get it.
Yeah, it really gave me great insight. And I feel like that will inform my approach in future interviews because I will endeavor to almost over-explain and go over the top with context because you just can't assume.
The situation is the most important, even if everything else stays the same. Give the background info, give the context. I love this advice. Sit on interview panels, even if you can volunteer, help out at a school to help people interview for their first job or something, like anything. Watch videos of real interviews. I don't even know how you would do that, but just anything that can give you that exposure. I promise you it makes a lot more sense when you see it.
Yeah. As someone also said, record yourself answering questions and listen back to practice. This is an Emma Smith tip. I record myself on audio and listen to it on loop. But our listener said, this one really helps me remember and avoids the awkward silence when your mind goes blank, which definitely happens to me.
So I thought to wrap up this episode, we could share a bit of a listener success story in this area. So we got a message from Nina on Instagram. She said, hi there, Sarah and Emma, a late diagnosed ADHD girlie here who has absolutely struggled with the job hunt for years. From blanking in interviews to cancelling interviews due to nerves, I had just about lost hope. Then two things happened. One, I got diagnosed with autism and ADHD at 30. And two, I found your podcast. Oh, amazing. I've asked for accommodations in every interview since and use your strategies to catalogue my best bits and craft epic career stories. I've landed myself over 10 interviews since following your podcast, including 3 just last week. I no longer fear interviews, rather I actually enjoy them. Whilst I haven't landed my next role yet, I know I'm really close. As a neurodivergent person, I've found the following accommodations really very helpful. 1, questions in advance of the interview. How much do we love this, right? It keeps coming up. 2, video interviews rather than in person. This is a really interesting one. If that's going to really help you, great. 3, prior notice before phone calls. Oh, absolutely. It's back to that kind of rescheduling. If you are caught off guard, hey, can I call you back in 10 minutes? I'm just in the middle of something. Do you mind if I call you back? Like, ask for that. Even if you don't get the opportunity to plan it and book it in, try and think about that in the moment. You're going to feel the pressure to just go with it. Try and book it in.
Don't be like me and answer in the grocery store, in the cheese aisle, and just start chatting there.
And then other people can hear you and you're conscious of it. Do you know what? The person on the other end of the phone doesn't know that you're a little bit uncomfortable because they don't really know where you are. So they're just treating you as if you're relaxed and this is the best you can do. So you want to make sure that you can actually chat. It's completely okay to say, can I call you back? Then the last thing she mentioned was additional processing time for work samples. So if you were asked to provide an example or a project or something like that, can I have, thanks for giving me, 24 hours, just letting you know, this is something that I want to take my time with, my nerves, blah, 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 this particular symptom, it really helps me. I think that's a great thing to ask for. And she said, thank you for all that you do. So I loved the inspiration from Nina of she's out there asking for accommodations. She now enjoys interviews. You can do it too.
I'm amazed. I didn't think it was possible for anyone to enjoy interviews.
That's like my ultimate goal with this whole thing that we do here, I think, is like how cool that someone doesn't hate them anymore. But like how incredible to enjoy something that is just like fundamentally so tough and challenging for a variety of reasons. Like that's a big transformation. That's like, you know, something you can be proud of forever.
That is all we have time for in today's episode, but fear not, because the deep dive series on neurodivergence continues. Part 3 is coming very soon. That is all about to disclose or not to disclose and all of the conundrums that can possibly pop up if you do. So stay tuned.
And send us your stories if you have one, or suggestions or tips, send them in. Thanks for listening to Interview Boss. If you want to request an episode on your specific conundrum or industry, send us the details. Email us or slide into our Instagram DMs. But if you DM us on Instagram and you're not following, Emma won't be happy and she will judge you.
I really will.
We believe in paying it forward, so if we've helped you, spread the word. You know the drill. Follow, review, find us on Instagram or LinkedIn. It all helps. Or you could go the old school way and tell someone else about the show. Can you believe we started Interview Boss in 2021?
Not really. It's insane. That's a lot of episodes and a lot of hours of talking.
Oh my gosh, it is. And if you're scrolling through all of our episodes, you might scroll straight past something that you really, really needed.
Yes, we're always getting messages from people asking us to do an episode on something, and I'm like, we already have.
So we've put together playlists to help you find the episodes that are exactly what you need, suited to your situation.
They're all categorized. If you're applying for jobs, we have episodes about resumes, cover letters, job ads. If you've been offered your dream job, we have episodes on resigning, exit interviews, and how to impress at your new company.
And we even have a very special playlist that's very popular for if you have an interview coming up immediately and you need just our most recommended hard-hitting episodes between now and then.
For all our last-minute listeners. It's all there for you. You can browse by category and check out all the playlists at interviewboss.com.au/podcast.